How to set up the remedē device post-implant for a remedē model 1001. How to set up the remedē device post-implant to ensure success at the therapy activation visit. These steps are after initial interrogation and require the wand to be placed over the patient's device. Before entering information into the remedē device, ensure you have the following details: the model number and serial number of the implanted lead, the date of implantation, the name of the implanting physician, the patient's time zone of residence, the patient's sleep schedule, which electrodes on the lead capture at implant, and finally, information on the concomitant device if the patient has one. We'll begin by navigating through the Lab Parameter tab, followed by the Summary tab, Therapy tab, Stimulus tab, Sensors tab, and finally, the Tools tab. Before we begin, in order to input information into the device, it must be in either monitor or therapy mode. Begin with the Lab Parameters tab. If the left lead is implanted, the minimum impedance limit is acceptable at the nominal value of 200 ohms. However, if the patient has a right lead implanted, the minimum impedance limit needs to be adjusted to 100 ohms from the nominal 200 ohms. Within the Summary tab, the patient ID field will remain empty until we enter this information using the patient info icon located in the Tools tab. We will, however, need to specify the type of stimulation lead implanted, indicate whether a sensing lead was implanted, and confirm whether the patient has a concomitant device. Moving on to the Therapy tab, align the start and stop times with the patient's sleep schedule and configure the maximum dose accordingly. This parameter can be modified during the therapy activation visit to accommodate the patient's schedule. For the asynchronous respiratory rate, it is beneficial but not mandatory to input the patient's respiratory rate while sleeping. This value is obtained during the implant procedure by requesting the sleeping respiratory rate from the anesthesiologist. Now let's move on to the Stimulus tab. Here we will designate the cathode and anode. It's beneficial to know which electrodes captured during implant as it provides a more precise stimulation impedance trend. If the patient has a right lead, select the cathode and anode that capture during implant. If a patient has a left lead, choose 3 as the cathode and 4 as the anode. This electrode pair combination enables us to visualize during therapy activation not only the impedance trend for the selected electrode pair, but how stable the lead has been in the left pericardiophenic vein. We will proceed directly to the Sensors tab since the weekly titration and nightly titration will be configured during the therapy activation visit. In the Sensors tab, it's necessary to choose the correct transthoracic impedance configuration. If only a stimulation lead is implanted, the configuration will be set to stim to can. If a sensing lead is implanted, the default sensing to can configuration is selected. Before moving on to the final tab, the Tools tab, ensure that you review the newly selected parameters and press Program to program these parameters within the device. In the Tools tab, our attention will be directed towards 3 icons presented under the initial setup section. In the Patient Info section, enter the 6-digit patient ID, which is specific to the account, provide details for physician contact, including the hospital, implanting physician, and manufacturing company of any concomitant device. Choose the date of implantation and the patient's time zone, and finally, input stimulation lead information. If a sensing lead is implanted, also input its information. For more detailed guidance on filling out the Patient Information tab, please refer to the instructional video on how to input patient information. Accelerometer calibration. It's essential to calibrate the position sensor within the remedē device after implantation. For detailed instructions, please consult the accelerometer calibration video. Finally, the time icon. Selecting the patient's time zone under the Patient Info tab does not automatically set the device current time to the specified patient's time zone, so it needs to be adjusted manually. For detailed instructions, please refer to the video on setting the remedē device time. The last step is to program the device to monitor mode. Activation of the device will take place at the time scheduled for the patient's therapy activation visit in a clinic setting. These steps outline how to set up the Remedy device post-implant for a Remedy Model 1001.